Hey guys, I'm FatBuddyCat, and this is my custom off-road chopper. I know what you're thinking. FBC. This is just a Baja Warrior. You're not fooling anybody. Well, it's low slung and over the back wheel. It has these custom extra wide stance foot pegs. And when you grab the handlebars, it already foots the bill. What's not footing much of anything these days is this mini bike's front suspension. These fork tubes have seals on the top, and these ones seem to be weathered, worn, dry rotted. No matter what, something's going to need replaced. I'm precariously placed on a jack so that the rear wheel's touching the ground and the front wheel is not. I'm now going to remove the axle without knocking the entire thing over. And so it begins. This axle gave me a little bit of resistance to get started. So much that I went as far to remove these two bolts here that hold the shock tubes in place, in hopes of the whole thing coming out at once and doing it on the floor. That didn't work, so finally got the axle to budge down here. I'm going to knock it through, get the front wheel off, and then I can already tell we're going to have some fun up here. This would be a great time to get this party started as well. I just stuck an old axle in the fork tube. I'm pushing down with one hand, and the other I'm working the hammers. It seems to be loose. I can twist it. So, whoop, there it is. That's it, guys. The whole shebang. I must have loosened this one up when I was banging around on the other one. This one twisted off like nothing. Back over on the workbench, I have the tube and the vise. It's not super tight. I put the wrench in, and then I just tapped it with a hammer. If I were to just twist this, I could actually spin the tube. So that's how loose it is. We don't want to ming anything up. I'm going to work the cap off, and where I just recently did the Trailmaster, I'm expecting that there's going to be some sort of tension and a spring. Maybe not as much tension. The spring's definitely not going to be as long. Okay. Fine threads. It has no ring on the top. If that's roughed up, you might look at replacing it. Pull out the spring. Bada bing. Wow, look at that. There's actually fluid in this thing. We seem to have milked about 45 milliliters out of that one. Here's where thinking ahead works in our favor. These bearings are coming out like nothing now. They've only been sitting out here marinating for about an hour on each side. I just dressed up the ends of the spacer, ran it through some soap and water, blew it off. Put that to the side for now and grab some sandpapes, see what we can't do with this axle. This actually came out really nice. Hopefully it goes in easier than it came out. I already took a small flathead screwdriver and I pried the dust caps off of the fork tubes. I thought these were the seals. The seals are actually down inside. When I was working on this mini bike before, I had it on its side, I had it upside down, it wasn't leaking, and it wasn't leaking when I was compressing them. We also had the same amount of fluid in both of them. So, I'm going to go ahead and say that these are still good for now. As long as this doesn't give us any guff. This whole process is very simple. So, I'll look into replacing these in the near future. For the time being, we're going to get back to reassembly. I'm going to get the shock tube set in the vise. First thing going down the hole, 70 milliliters of fresh fork oil. Next is the spring. It does appear that one end might have the coils closer together. That's going to go down. Now I'm going to be cramming a 9/16 socket in right on top. We'll put the cap over that and carefully twist it on. That way we don't ming up the threads. To set this cap nut, I just held the tube and my vice grips firm in one hand and then work the wrench with the other. When putting these fork tubes back on, all I'm paying attention to right now is that this indentation here lines up with these. So if I were doing this side, I would go in this way. When the bolts are in the clamp section and those grooves are lined up, it prevents the tube from pulling out. If you're not lined up, these bolts will be difficult to thread in. So get them straight and it shouldn't give you any problem. To reinforce the stock clamps, we're going to be adding an 1.25 inch split collar just below. These clamps are super tight. I feel much better about this. I'm using a razor blade to pop the seals on my new bearings. I'm going to add some of my own grease, pack it in, and reseal them. Bearings are in, spacer in the middle. That was a night and day difference. Just have to tighten up the bolt, get the mini bike back on the ground. Alright, let's see how we did. Before, I could bottom this thing out, no problem. Oh yeah, beautiful. I'm 240 pounds, I'm hanging. Awesome. Might be a little stiff for you lightweights. Now that we have more than ample preload on the suspension, there's only one other thing I want to touch upon on this fork. And that's this anti-vibration system underneath the factory risers. No matter what, when I tighten them up, after about 20 minutes, it's wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And that's not really the best feeling in the world. The cool part is that it's only 2 5/8 nuts to remove the risers and the handlebar. All is one. I have the riser sitting right on the top plate. Just one nut holding it on. That way I can sit behind the bars and see how it feels. I like it. Now I just gotta get some washers and nuts back on there. Should be good to go. So, found a bit of an issue. Look at the size of these holes on this top plate. We'll stick our finger through those things. These bolts are most certainly smaller than the holes. So, those are just going to be, you know what I mean? I think we can do better. If you take one of these anti-vibration bushings apart, you'll find this in the center. This is just a spacer, but the bolt fits inside of it. The spacer also fits very tightly in this hole. One of these little rubber sandwiches is a little bit fatter than a 5/8 collar. Our bushing spacer fits inside the 5/8 collar perfect. So, if we take these and we place them in the holes and then tap them into place, we can then feed our bars down into the new holes. We'll remove the set screws from our collars. We'll place each of our collars on top of 1/2 of that rubber anti-vibration grommet. That way you have something like that. Grab a nut, a lock washer, and one of your units. I'm going to be swapping these to a nylock nut, but I think you can see what I did here. Where the remainder of the spacer was hanging through, we covered it up with the 5/8 collar. And then took one of those cap washers from the anti-vibration bushing and we placed that over the 5/8. Then we added a lock washer and a nut. That way everything holds nice and tight and there's no way that these bars can deviate off of center. Another option that we have is to remove the caps off of the riser, take the handlebars off, and then remove the bolt itself. You can take that down to the hardware store and get one that's slightly longer. We'll replace those nuts at the same time. Up next, we're going to be installing a 4-liter gas tank. Make sure to check out the links in the description so you can see firsthand how we figure these things out. It's a community effort. It's also a work in progress. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night. I'll catch you on the next one.